And now, Kyle and Steven present another episode of the Go F Yourself podcast. It's Fix. Really? Well, that's embarrassing. The Go Fix Yourself podcast.
Welcome to the Go Fix Yourself podcast. Today, we are very excited. Just very excited, man. You can just feel the vibe in the room.
Oh. I can feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's thick.
Today, we're excited because we are joined by Mac Holtan. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey.
One day we'll figure out all the, we'll have our custom claps going and cheers
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll have an audience, actually. Like,
Yeah.
be like Alaska Airlines Center, like, hey, do you guys want to like record a podcast in the arena? And be
Wow.
like, I guess if that's really what you wanted to do.
Can it hold 8 people?
Yeah, yeah. It's this giant echo.
Yeah, I
8
was gonna
people
say.
spread out throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, cricket.
I
That's
love it. I
wonderful.
love
that.
Excellent crickets.
Well, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're very appreciative that you took your time to do this. We're also very excited to dive in and learn about what you've been doing because it has been a while since we've seen you.
That's true. I've been gone a lot, and you fine gentlemen between like a pandemic and the business of lives. I just haven't seen you guys in a while, so it's cool to catch up.
Yeah.
And I do want to start the podcast by saying that I do feel grateful to be here. I feel validated to be here because I gave Steven an out to say, actually, I don't want you on this podcast because I expressed that I feel like I accidentally bullied my way onto the podcast because I'm not very I haven't been people facing in a long time in the sense that I was a we'll get into all the history, but I used to be a musician and on stage a lot, and I've been more behind the scenes for a long time. But I was chatting with another guest of the show, friend of all of us, Nick Carpenter, and we were at the Wolverines game, and we were just kind of
Wolverines.
right, go Wolverines. We were sharing kind of a mutual love for I love that we can still live in Alaska and we can make a living in the music touring industry, but we can still live here and we didn't have to move necessarily. We were having some real arm around the shoulder. It's cool that we're both doing what we're doing. And I was texting him after, and we had a few beers, whatever, and I was expressing appreciation, and out of nowhere he's like, "You should go fix yourself." And I and it was just enough beer deep that I screenshot it very cheekily and sent it to Steven. No other words, just that screenshot.
And I just thumbs downed it.
Yeah.
I was just like,
no, you were nice.
Nah.
It was one of those things where I wasn't twisted or anything. I wasn't blacking out, but I woke up and I was like, oh, is that too cheeky? Because I always overthink interactions.
Oh,
so
no.
I was like, okay, he still wants me on. I gave him an out.
It was funny, and then also I didn't tell you this, but Nick messaged about a week later after we had scheduled you, and then he was like, "You gotta get Mac on GFY," all caps. I was like, "Dude, we snagged him up a few days ago."
Oh yeah, you sense the vibe. And,
We added him to the roster.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. But no, that's the thing too. I mean, we people that we have on, we're like, who should we have on? And he said, have Ed Washington on. And then we had Ed Washington on and blown away. I mean, that was an amazing conversation. And it's something that's come up in both of their conversations that you just brought up. I don't even know if you did this on purpose, but the whole you can pursue your dream while you stay in Alaska.
Yeah.
While you stay away from, we're so far away from anything. You can't drive to a show in Seattle and then drive right back. So I mean, that's kind of something I want to get into, not right away, but put a note and little pin in that.
And I'll say it now. I'm thinking about it because I was gonna. I'm not scripted at all, but I was gonna work my way towards a thought that I really
ladies and
like.
gentlemen who aren't watching a podcast, he has 10 pages in front of
He's
him.
got a whole notebook in front of him.
Yeah.
But what I want to get to is that I haven't really truly made it in a lot of senses, but at the same time, one thing I've learned that applies to a lot of things in the art world is there really is no one formula, and I think that's something we can all agree on. Is there's literally no one way to quote unquote make it or do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I was gonna work my way there because that's what I've observed is there literally isn't a formula, and so the fact that people don't have to move because we grow up in Alaska. We hear stories about Portugal, the man, and
tour,
36.
get out there,
and you got to move, and we've all done a version of that. All of us in this room. So like, I think it's cool that we can now be at a place where us three are still sitting here. We're all pretty happy with where we're at. And we still live here, in Alaska, which I've managed. I get on the fence about it, but I can never leave. Truly,
Really?
not never. Okay, I might live somewhere, but I'm always gonna end up back here.
Yeah. That's the thing. I was actually talking to someone today who lives in LA, and I was like, that's kind of like one of my dreams is to live in LA, right? I want to be a filmmaker, and like, where do you go to like pursue film? LA, Hollywood, right? But they were like, you would want to move, like leave Alaska? And I was like, well, no, like I want to stay here for like the nice parts of the year.
Yeah.
Everybody's
winterbird.
Everybody's dream
snowbird.
is a snowbird.
Yeah.
Like, if you can do that, somehow get out of the winter and go somewhere for a few months, right? Somewhere nice, and then just be up here in the summer. Like, that is literally the most ideal situation.
It is.
That I could think of, really.
Because I don't know about you. I don't have any winter activities. My winter activity is sitting in
Sleeping.
front of my computer and just like editing or writing scripts or whatever. And like, I don't do much winter stuff. So that's kind of tough for me,
I got a real controversial take.
I saw you mulling something over there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
like,
honest.
What's going on with his brain right now?
I want to do the reverse. I'm a winter boy.
You want to come up in the winter?
I am going to be honest. Thank you. Yeah. It's a hot take that I only learned about myself recently because I hated the winter growing up. I moved from Minnesota when I was a kid, which is colder than Alaska. So I feel like I always was kind of, I didn't like the winter. I want to go somewhere hot. But now that I've been out and about and I've been traveling with my work, I got to say, I think I'm truly a winter boy. Like I love Nordic skiing. I love like skating. I love being outside. I'm an anxious person, and the cold always snaps me out of it when I step out into it.
Cold exposure.
And I'm gonna be honest. I love Alaska. I'm not here to diss Alaska, but I'm really sick of this manic solstice energy that people have. When you know what I'm talking about. When you wake up and you see them having brunch and mimosas, and then they're somehow in Homer camping by the evening, and then they're somehow still up at 5 a.m. I can't hang. I have circles under my eyes that whole time of the year.
You only have so many hours to get all of summer in.
Yeah.
It's like,
you better enjoy it.
It makes total sense. I'm just saying I'm reading myself, and I prefer the cold, sleepy winter. And every time we're somewhere sunny, like when I'm in tour, I'm like, I'm sweating all day. I hate this. And then we like pass through like the Midwest, and I'm like, oh, this rules. I love this. I'm gonna wear shorts to the show, and everybody.
There is something to say. Now, I'm not dissing on the winter. When we first get snow,
you're about to diss on winter though.
No. But just wait. No, like the first few
sucks.
months of winter aren't bad. And then like when the snow's falling and it's like fresh snow and you got a fire going in your house and it's like freaking, Bon Iver on the radio
Huga.
And you're reading a book, like there's nothing fucking better than that, right? Like that is so like, I love chill moments like that. But I think the longevity of winter here.
Breakup season is where it really gets like, oh, get it over.
So like
with.
Here I am. So I mean, spoiler alert for the people, a little peek behind the curtain. We're recording this in March, early March, and we just got a little snowfall. And I'm kind of like, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm ready to go. But also like summer's right around the corner. So I'm like, all right. So I have that little glimmer of hope, as soon as solstice happens in December, winter solstice, like I'm just like, okay, all right. We're getting back on track.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think there's something about like enjoying, what do they say? Like enjoy the journey, not like the destination kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so like, it's like pre-vacation and pre-summer and all those things. Like you're really like, oh, I'm planning all these things I'm going to be doing and it's going to be great. I got this vacation or summer coming. And it's like that, I think, gets you through it because for some reason that's really enjoyable. Almost like planning a vacation is more enjoyable than the actual vacation to me. Because when I get on vacation, then it's like, oh, I'm stressing about like where we're going to go to eat and where we're going to get the kids to go have fun and all this stuff. And it's like, I just enjoyed the planning part.
I get that.
I totally get it.
Well, we skipped the intro. With you. So we tell every guest that we have on here that my parents listen. My mom, my dad. They live in New York. They don't know my friends, but they know me and Kyle.
They basically know me.
Yeah.
They want to believe their son has more than one friend.
Yeah.
So
Wow, Kyle can do a lot of voices on that podcast of yours. That's not how my mom sounds. Every episode, I swear my mom
make
has
her
just,
sound
like,
terrible.
Sorry, it's
Carol.
like sorry, mom. One time I was like, "Hey, boys," I was like, "Dad, why does she sound like a Simpson character?" Anyway, so tell my parents who you are, and what you do right now, and then we'll get into like the nitty gritty.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, Stevens, folks. My name is Mac, and I currently work in the music touring industry as a tour manager, a merchandise manager. And between doing that and helping with local events, I also like to make coffee, and it gets me out of the house. So I do that when I'm home.
Are you like a barista?
A broista.
Broista?
Shout out Helen. She gave me a hard time because she was like, everybody who used to be in a metalcore band either becomes a barber, a tattooer, a brewer, or a barista. And I'm like, I'm on my way. Or a gym coach.
Or a Traeger guy.
Yeah.
I love that. Traeger guy.
No,
That's where I'm going.
Are you?
Eventually.
Okay.
I do love making coffee. I worked in a variety of worlds, which we'll get there. We'll chronologically get there. But like, I'm really introverted when I'm home and not touring, and that gets me out of the house because I work at a very nice shop, that Feeling Co. with all my coworkers, and I basically when I'm out of that, it fills my social bubble to make coffee for people because I'm a coffee snob, and so it's like kind of like I call it like millennial retirement work because it doesn't feel like work, and I get my bills paid by doing it, and it's like, this is easy. I just make coffee and talk to people.
When I was working at the Rest to Go, I learned how to make coffee, and I found that part really soothing as well. When I would just make coffee, like when I would work a morning shift or lunch shift, it was really nice. And then you got to like kind of just like steam the milk and then slowly pour it into the coffee, and then there's nice chill music playing, and so it's a very nice way to like kind of come into work rather than the dinner session where you like come in and you're like, fucking fire 48, fire 42, go. It's like, stress. So yeah, there is something meditative about making coffee. Are you like doing the leaves yet? Are you doing like the fancy designs and
coffee? I'm not quite
Latte
there.
art is what he's referring to.
I have an ongoing
fancy leaves, Kyle.
Fancy leaves. So I was like, we making tea here?
I thought that too. No, I'm hit or miss with the latte art, but I have an ongoing bit with some of my coworkers. Shout out Ori and Sarah. I have cosmic horror art. Like I just pour it, and I'm like, what does this look like? And like one time it was like a guy drowning in a pool, and another time it was like a chest burster from the Alien movies.
Hell yeah,
and
dude.
I was like, I make cosmic horror accidental.
I love that.
I was gonna say, is it like an ink blot test? Like, what do you see?
Rorschach.
It's Rorschach all the way.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's fun.
So let's tell my parents and everybody else listening how we know each other, how the three of us go back. And so most people know like Kyle and I were in bands separately. Kyle joined, my band on tour.
I was a groupie.
He actually did the tour manager job before.
Hey, shout out.
Before it was cool.
Yeah, and we paid him jack shit. We didn't pay him nothing.
I got
still
paid
not
in
cool.
friendship. So
I like to tell people I'm not cool. I'm cool adjacent. I'm just tour managed.
I'm right next to it.
It's funny whenever I talk to like bands that I looked up to, whenever I talk to their tour manager or anybody in their group, I was always nervous as a kid. Because I was just like, oh my gosh, you know them? Stuff like that. Totally. And so it was just like, I was nervous. So, I mean, you are cool, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I'm throwing my hand exaggerated at the camera right now for those not seeing the visual component. I'm going, nah.
And so basically, way long ago, because I joined Thera in like 2009, and then me and Kyle, our band started playing in 2010, and I think it was like soon after that, or it was like in that area where we were playing with your band, which was not what band? I mean, was it Red AM Timber then?
That was the original band. Yeah.
Rat. Okay.
Rat for short, and the name came from a King of the Hill line because. I guess we might as well start on that. Yeah, so like I grew up in the Trapper Creek, Talkeetna area. I was from Minnesota originally, but grew up in Trapper Creek. Would, like many Alaskans can relate, you go to Alaska, you go to a Kurt Bundy, AK Soul show, you see 36 Crazy Fists in 2004, and you're just like, I want to do this. And
100%.
Specifically with two of my guys in a small town, like 200 kids at my high school, and there was 30 in my elementary school, in Trapper Creek, close enough to Anchorage that we could go to these shows on the weekends. So we really idolized it. We would drive the 2 hours to go to the downstairs Cars or the Egan Center or whatever. And we get Taco Bell and be home by 3 a.m., you know, like that kind
Hell
of vibe.
yeah, dude, that's a good night.
And so like me and my boys, Jens and Brandon, childhood friends, shout out both of them. I don't know if either will listen, but we saw.
If Jens doesn't listen to this, I'll be pissed.
He's gonna. I hope so. I hope so.
Little baby daddy.
I know. He doesn't have a lot of time in his hands, but maybe he will. But we specifically, we all like basically we went to Summer Meltdown and we saw Poison the Well, and we were like, we just need to start a band, and we taught ourselves how to like play music. So like we were never technically good, couldn't read notes, but that's when we linked up. Is within a year of playing, like we played like Make a Scene. We named our band Ready Aim Timber after
Make a Scene. Oh my God, you just took me back.
That's how we got to the name. Is so like we grew up in Talkeetna, Trapper Creek, which if anybody knows Talkeetna, it's very like environmental forward. And we were dumb rebellious high schoolers who liked alternative heavy music. So like the whole imagery was like, you know, like we were like quote unquote, I feel so silly saying this now, but we were like quote unquote like anti-hippie in high school. So like we watched a King of the Hill episode and there was a line about shooting trees, or Hank Hill says Ready Aim Timber, and we were like that's the name.
There it is.
So like,
That's
you know,
cool.
that band wasn't good, but it was fun, and that's how I met you guys, is because as it happens in the MySpace era, I think it was Callahan invited us to play in Anchorage at the Downstairs, and we played. It was a Sarah P show also, but like Helen was managing, and that's when I met Helen too. But that was 2010, and so we started playing shows in the Valley. I graduated high school, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, other than I knew that I had a knack for kind of like business and managing and maybe foreshadowing. Like I kind of managed my own band and would always get them together, and I would be the front-facing person, and I always kind of was regimented in that way. And I just kind of like threw something at the wall, and I was like, I should just study business. I should study like business management. And, you know, like I knew I always wanted to do music. It was what inspired me. I used to be like a sports kid. And then somewhere in middle school, I had that angsty age, and I was like, part of it was I played basketball and hockey, and then everyone got like way taller than me, and I just wasn't into it anymore. And then I pivoted to music and really identified with it. And I was like, well, I don't know that I can make a living doing this, but like I should study something, and a business just felt right. So we all moved to Anchorage, the whole band. And those guys, Brandon and Jens, lived on the floor of my dorm illegally for the first month they lived in Anchorage. And we
illegally? What do you mean by illegally? I mean, it's just
you're not supposed to have overnight guests at the UAA dorms.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't go to UAA.
So anyways, all this to say is that, so my Valley band wound up in Anchorage, and we would play shows with the coveted Witness the End and Thera, and that was a time. Boy howdy, that was a time.
That was a time. The Downstairs. You're just taking me back. Even playing like saying Make a Scene. I don't think I ever played that, but I went to shows.
So you're headed out to Wasilla, right? And it was like out in just a random road, essentially.
Pretty much.
It was a warehouse of sorts.
Yes.
And what was his name? Was it
Freifogel, I think.
Freifogel?
Oh, yeah.
And
he's still doing shit.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him in like a decade. I don't know.
He's still out in the Valley. I still see like him he shares our stuff.
That's where we played our first show.
Witness the End?
Yeah.
No way,
was
really?
Make a Scene, because I remember we pulled up out there and I'm like, what the hell is this place? And I was like, okay. And it was like a decent crowd in there and everything. And it was just the most surreal moment, because I was like, oh, people were like responding to this music. So like that feels really good. The first time you play in front of a crowd, like your own songs. And I just remember that was like such a weird place, because we played there like 2 or 3 more times after, but I was like, this is the most random like show.
Yeah, it was kind of nice because it was like a strip mall.
No, this was,
I think
it moved.
They had multiple locations.
Yeah, this was the one.
We played the warehouse, what you're talking about, but they had like the Rose Square or whatever that is. They had a spot there. I'm from the Valley,
Square.
but I'm not Wasilla Valley, so I'm not intricate on all those details.
It was just, I remember it's Bernard Builder Supplies kind of on the left, and you take a right like up the hill.
Oh, it was up there.
That was way up there.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think can be relatable to a lot of Alaskans. It certainly happened to me. Is I used to commute like 16 miles each way to school and drive 2 hours to go to shows and play shows. And then as soon as you move to Anchorage, you're like, what? I'm not going to Southside. Are you kidding me? I'm not going over there.
Yeah.
And like, that's part of it, is like in the Valley, you're like, the show, it's
out.
like 8 miles down this really random road. And everybody's like, sign me up. And
Yeah.
then like in Anchorage,
We could
you're
be
like,
as loud as we want.
Bro, I remember, so Make a Scene, the only show I went to, they were in the Rose Square in Wasilla, in that like little strip mall. And we drove from Chickaloon to go see Lost Concept. This was right before I joined them, so it was kind of like a hangout kind of
You
thing.
want to join the band, you got to come watch us.
Yeah, it's kind of what it was.
Nice.
Chad, I can't remember his last name. Chet Smith, I guess. Is Chet
Sure.
Smith? Is
I
that the radio guy? Old Bob and Chad.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
He was like playing bass for them that night. And anyways, long story short, that was the first night. So we left there and we got super drunk, and that was my first time getting drunk. So
Sorry,
thanks.
Carol.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think she might. I think I've told her.
You
about
told her
that.
this. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He was
so
27.
Make a Scene really just got us rowdy and ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're drumming. We
Yeah.
didn't say that. So you're a drummer in the band. Where did you find the rhythm? Let's talk about because that is the one thing. I have rhythm, right? I have it.
Ricky disagrees. So.
He did disagree, but to my advantage, I learned how to have rhythm. But whenever it comes to drums, I can do like the hands, right? I can do it okay, but then it's adding the feet. I'm like, fuck, this
Sure.
is stupid.
Yeah.
I can't do it. So like, where did that come from? And you said you were just kind of like, I wanted to be in a band.
Self-taught and
Yeah.
YouTube.
You guys are taking me back in a fun way. I haven't thought about myself as a musician for a while, so that's kind of nice. Just because
This is what we do, baby.
Even you're
is what
getting
we
me
do.
back where it all started, really. But
Yeah. We're just fixing everybody.
It was a classic, like between Brandon and Yance and I were like, we just kind of like assigned ourselves, like, okay, well, you should do this and you should do this, and
You guys like draw straws.
I was gonna
or
say, can
name out of
somebody
a
pat
hat?
their head and rub their tummy? Which one can do it? Drummer.
it was something like that, yeah. But so my parents, neither of them are truly musicians, but I grew up in a musical household. Like they're just appreciators, and which makes the next part that I'm gonna say really crazy to hear almost. But I was magnified towards drums. My mom was like, "Oh yeah, you always loved just like hitting stuff on the table, like to the rhythm." Like, my dad, he like loved the Clash, and my mom loved she saw the B-52s when she was pregnant with me, and like tried to stage dive, and like they're like musical.
While she was pregnant with you.
Yeah,
You tried
she
to
might
stage dive.
disagree, but that's
as things go. You were
that's
there.
the story. Yeah.
So
But I grew up in a musical household, so my parents they love a lot of good music, and I just would always kind of clap my hands and stuff, and kind of it felt sort of natural to me, and which makes the next part really crazy to hear because my parents are really loving and supporting. I had great home, great everything, very supportive, but for some reason they didn't want me to have a drum set in the house.
I can understand.
Yeah.
So it was a two-part. Now
can
that
totally-
we're older, we can be like,
Oh,
oh,
100%.
that sounds like the worst thing ever.
I watched The Office. You know how freaking
Oh, yeah.
his one
Suck
kid.
it.
I know.
Yeah, suck
Suck
it.
it.
But I'm like, would I allow my kid? I would have to. I would have to allow my kid because I was like, I
well,
wanted to
we
do
have
it.
the luxury of electronic drum kits now, where you can just have headphones.
No,
Yeah, they hit different.
They do hit
It doesn't
different.
feel right.
I don't
It
care
doesn't
if they're
feel right.
7. They're gonna just hit different. Like I don't care.
I'm just gonna soundproof the hell out of my basement. Just like
That kid can wait.
Cage.
Yeah.
Anyway, so okay, your parents didn't want you to get a drum set.
Well, they didn't want me to, but they wanted me to prove it, and I had to do a couple of steps to even have a drum set when I was. I got a drum set when I was 12. Didn't really start the band until I was already kind of talking about starting a band. We didn't really do it until we saw Poison the Well when I was 14, 15, whatever. But it was a couple parts to the process where one, I had to give up candy for a year. I was
Nice.
almost 12 years old.
Because your parents asked you to do this?
They wanted me to believe in it.
I love it.
And I had to give up soda for a year, and I wasn't allowed to play it in the house. I had to keep it at a family residence's house nearby. So in the winter, I had to start a wood stove fire to get warm enough to play the drums that I wasn't allowed to play in the house. And I taught myself playing drums through sight and just honestly just trying to impress my bandmates who also were learning the whole time.
I love that.
We'd learn Brandon would learn one Metallica riff, and we would just play it for 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was that was kind of that's how I got
Good
to
times
drumming.
though.
I freaking learned. I remember Weezer, dun 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 dun. Yeah, and then my buddy in the drums, and that's what we played too. So that was our thing. Or Nirvana.
It's beautiful.
Just
yeah,
hours just staring
yes.
at each other. Just
yeah.
you want to just keep going?
You get it.
Maybe
One more
37 more times.
One more
Come on,
time.
yeah.
You get
Yeah.
it. You get it. Yeah.
That's fun.
I love that visual too of the idea of, first off, you had to work really, really, really hard by letting go of sugar. In my head, that's a hard thing to do. But also the idea of you were kind of passionate, you're motivated enough to like go outside, start up your car or like, snow machine or just walk or whatever, and then go start the wood stove and then get going. And like that's kind of like a little process. And I would imagine like, some people would be like, I just don't feel like doing it today.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other things in my life I won't even bother to like try to get out of the living room to try to pick up. So I guess that was the proof in the pudding that I was going to care about this thing.
I love that.
So like did they lay out these rules like you kind of said, I want to be a drummer or I want to drum, and so then they're like, okay, to do that you have to do this, and so
something like that.
Did they do that about other things, or was this just the one thing?
Specifically that, and that's what makes it strange is my parents are so supportive and they were such musical people that I think it was just like you gotta want it because like
this is annoying as
it's an annoying
it's
thing
annoyingly loud
to tolerate. Yeah, but like I'm sure
suck it.
I can't. I can't think of specifics, but I'm sure I was like a lot of kids and there was things I picked up and dropped, and I was playing sports kind of still at that time, so they were like, well, you're still involved in these different things, and obviously thank God the drum set was there because like I quit sports. I was not in a good place in those middle school years for sure.
Yeah,
and that brought me back, and it was easy to get really attached to this thing because like I'm sure you too specifically and other people listening can relate. Like people like us who like music, like there's something about it that like just moves something so deep in you. You just kind of keep chasing it, and you can't quite articulate it. But like, seeing music as a kid and all that, like it was like, I just want to be a part of that feeling.
That's the thing. I think we've had plenty of conversations on this with musicians now. And I think it was Ed Washington. This is the second time I've referenced him. But it was such a good podcast, such a good conversation. But I think it was like we all agreed like the act of performing was like a drug.
Yeah.
And that was like, and then seeing that and then visualizing yourself, because like visualizing yourself on stage in front of 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever, and then like rocking out and just jamming on the guitar or the drums or bass or whatever guitar, I don't give a fuck. But like that was like, that was like my thing. I remember like, as a kid, that's what I wanted. And then when I got it, I was like, I want more of this. I just want more of this. And so making music is fun. I love making music and recording, but I think there is something to say about performing it and then just feeling that energy when the crowd is in it with you.
Oh, for sure, like a drug, yeah. And I think that sometimes when you get in that world younger and don't have a fully formed brain yet because you're in your teens, early 20s, and I think you guys said it before, like none of our bands ever really quote unquote like made it proper, but we all played big rooms and big shows and things that were important to us.
Open up for big bands.
Yeah, things that are very special to come up in Alaska to do because you can have that direct connection with a band you idolize, things like that. Like where you get to at least local open forum and like be like, I did this, and like you can think back on it, and I do. But like I think there's also something really important to like forming kind of your adult identity going through that because you like have this drug and obviously some people come out the other end not feeling good, and I'm not going to sit here and go through the whole diatribe of psychiatry of people who make it and fall out and have addictions and substance abuse, but like to have that kind of like ego infusion and that boost and that high all at once while putting your art in a public space to be judged and critiqued and like by others, and to open your brain outside of your own sphere of like influence to like get better and progress and respect other art forms. Like I for sure was like elitist about my music taste in high school because I so strongly identified my personality with like I'm in this band and this genre sucks because metal is better and like just different stuff like that like if you can come out the other end like a somewhat like mature and at peace person and have if there's like a beautiful process along the way where like getting into promoting and working for venues and different things like that like opened my palette as I was growing as a person, like just, not having an ego and different things like that, or at least learning to drop the ego. We all have an ego to a degree. I mean, I'm speaking on a podcast that takes some degree of like self-confidence or whatever.
Dude. That's never crossed my mind.
Yeah. I was say we have a podcast. Yeah.
But yeah, to like grow through all of that and come out the other end, a modestly adjusted person who can appreciate a lot of things. There's something beautiful to that. And you kind of like got through all these highs and got out the other end and you're just like, look at this big world. You know what I mean? Like when I first started promoting and like getting to witness these genres that were outside of my own, like I remember in like 2000 and we'll work our way through the next steps chronologically, but like I remember it was 2000 and 12 when Helen did her first Dylan Francis show, and I was like, why would people pay to see a DJ? And you know, and like stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I get it as soon as you're there. You know, like you got what's that turnstile?
Energy.
What's that turnstile line? You got to see it live to get it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You got to see it live to get it.
Yep, I love that because I do remember like my first band that I saw live. I mean, it's like I think once it hits you, once you get that bug, like it's hard to, shake it, and you want to get the bite again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so basically, it's just like I haven't been playing music. I still want to get back up on stage, and I still want to play, and I still will write music, and I'll be like, oh man, what if I could
Just get up there
and just fucking go, man.
Dude, let's start a band.
We should stop.
You know how many times? I mean, like I have had to say no to so many people because I'm like,
Okay, big flex. Jeez.
Sorry.
Many people have been asking me.
yeah, no one's asking you. That sucks. Dude.
I've started one-man bands. That's all I'm doing now.
No, I'm like, I love the what it takes to do it, and like what I did it, but the starting at that again is like, ooh.
Yeah, starting ground zero again is like not
There's
appealing.
The sweat equity.
Yeah, so that's
to
what
get
I'm
there.
saying. I'm like, I love the idea of like where I worked up to, but like doing that all over again and trying to work back in something new. I'm just like, I don't know if I have it in me right now.
You don't want to go cut your teeth again,
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're playing in Ready Aim Timber.
Met you guys doing that.
Met us
separately.
Remind me the shirt you guys had. That there was one shirt you guys had specifically that I really liked. Did it have a chainsaw on it and a beaver maybe? Like you guys had something that was like
Our big
crazy.
hit, our big hit merch during this era, and I'm gonna repeat this again. Radium Timber was not a good band, but it was a lot of fun, and we learned through that whole thing. We did a name change to Griffith, where we took ourselves a lot more "quote unquote" seriously, and like did the thing a little bit more seriously. Got more real traction because it was better music. But like, yeah, the shirt
Maybe
you're
it
thinking
said
of,
like
it said "I am the lumberjack" because we had a song
Oh yeah.
that had that. It's like
Yeah.
And kids
Like
would, and like again, I can be like, we weren't musically good, but like there was always 100 kids losing their mind to that part. That wasn't particularly good, but like it connected for people.
Yeah,
And
as long as you can build a community around something, it doesn't have to be great.
No.
It just has to be everybody on the same page.
that's what makes hardcore so beautiful. Is that's what drives it. Is that?
I'd be curious. Are you guys on Spotify?
Oh no. We have Griffith has a Bandcamp.
Bandcamp.
I hope Jens is listening. I'm gonna flame him real quick. It was his job to get us on Spotify.
Oh.
And it didn't.
It's easy, dude.
Hey,
Yeah.
I shouldn't. I'm gonna flame Jens one more time, and I want to say that I love Jens
I
dearly.
lo-
but I
I
shouldn't
do- I
ask
do
a guy who he still uses a Zune in 2023 to get us on Spotify. I should say that.
Yeah, it's like all of that stuff is so easy to do. But granted, Witness the End's not on there anymore either. Like we were on iTunes and all that stuff, and I was kind of in charge of that. But then at one point, I was like, "What are we doing here? Paying for nothing?"
Yeah. Hey, let's get ready to get sweaty.
Yeah,
I am the lumberjack.
exactly.
So
there was like that
good.
phase. Was it Joe Hamming?
Don't know the name.
He played with Chad and like.
Oh yeah.
Wolves,
I know him secondhand, but I've never met him.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But
So
I
he did a lot of
friends.
merch designs and like logos and stuff. And I forget who we went through for that. I can't even remember. But yeah, when we came up with that shirt, I was like, "Get ready to get sweaty." I was
Yeah.
like, "I like that. That's catchy."
It works. I mean, that was probably our best selling shirt. I'm sure it was your best selling shirt.
for sure. And then we made the panties. I don't know if you remember that. They said
You made
witness.
panties?
Yeah, we made women's panties that said "Witness the End" on the back. And
Hey, I love merch and I
Yeah,
love
I
this stuff.
I love the idea of like putting something on clothing and like seeing how it went. Like people
Ooh,
like,
tell me about it.
yeah, it's just like seeing like what worked, what didn't, like what designs and all that stuff. And that's like a whole other avenue that like bands obviously hire somebody to handle for the most part. But like I kind of got that experience because, I was one of the older ones in the band, me and Ryan. And so we had little money, but we had money to like buy merch, buy all the stuff we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, well, what's going to sell? What's not going to sell? And so we're like really throwing like stuff into the dark with the like selling underwear at a show. We sold those at the Egan Center and like sold out.
Yeah, I bet.
Really? Yeah, and then we started getting pictures.
Why couldn't you use the same marketing with Alaska, dude?
Oh, I know, we failed.
I remember that. I took that merch order, I think.
Did you?
Yeah, because I worked in screen printing for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that. I'm like, they're doing it. They're really doing this. They're really putting Alaska on some panties.
Yeah, we tried.
Leggings.
Leggings. We didn't go that
didn't go
far.
Oh,
panties.
you're right. Sorry, yeah.
We're
Leggings.
classier than that, okay, Mac?
Yeah, hey, don't show too much skin.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
guys.
Don't reveal too much.
So you guys are making it happen. You have a name change. You go to Griffith. You take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And so you guys, I that's really the time I remember seeing you guys like do shows and get bigger. And I mean, because I remember seeing Ready Aim Timber,
Right.
But like
Scrappy.
all I was cared, like I cared about just getting drunk back in that day, right? And then like when we started getting serious about music, you guys started getting serious about music,
Yeah.
And then so we started playing bigger shows. We played Egan Center.
We did
stuff
together
like
a
that.
few times.
Yeah,
Shared a green room a couple times.
yeah, and that's.
Zombie Fist, you guys were Star Wars. We were Star Trek.
I know that
And it wasn't planned.
I was gonna say that I do remember like
Nerds.
talking to was it Brandon? Was it Brandon?
Probably.
Yeah, I remember talking to him about it and just being like, man, these guys like fuck, I love these guys, and just being excited about what you guys were doing.
Sure.
In Griffith, and I still love all you guys, even though I never see any of you.
Even
Appreciate
though
that.
I forgot.
Just the last time I hung out with any of you guys, it was good.
Hey,
right?
we at least were fun, if anything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's important
yeah.
to be likable to
think
some
so.
extent. I mean, I think
extent.
about that with
To
bands
some people.
touring a lot and like
Big key. Hey, if anyone here is listening to this and they have a modest inclination to try to get into the music touring world, just be cool. Just be normal. Be nice.
I mean, I think about that when you have let's just say 3 to 4 bands on some sort of tour, and like you're together every night playing, 20, let's say 21 shows. I'm like, that's a lot of hanging out, like in the daytime and afternoon, and then after parties. And I'm like, if you're not cool, like I'm sure that's the most awkward 3 weeks of your life. Of like, this guy sucks. Like I don't want to like hang with him, or
There are horror
or
stories that I've
bands
heard.
that
Yeah.
just suck. Like, and so I've always thought about that as like, you gotta at least be likable, because I mean, you always hear about like, I love touring with these guys, or I love touring like they're my brothers or sisters, whatever. And it's like that probably plays so much into like the tour season. Like,
Definitely.
who are we bringing on? Oh, I'd love to bring those guys. So
Yeah, I mean, it is music touring is a business first and foremost, on top of art and other things, which is a whole complicated thing. But yeah, bands are still in it, and they can't really disconnect themselves from their crew, because there are plenty of artists who are big enough to have a separate tour bus for their crew and these different things.
yeah.
Very important when you're at a certain level to really like who you're around and have really good boundaries and be comfortable with that person, as well as trusting them.
Yeah.
I get that. So, to take it back a little bit.
Yeah, we jumped around a little.
Yeah, we did. We jumped forward, and I want to move backwards a little bit because of the promotion and getting you talking about with Helen, who I've been trying to get on the podcast.
Helen, get on this podcast.
Thank you. But also, how did that happen?
Yeah,
because she could have gone to other people, but how did you connect with her? Did she connect with you? But also, like, what was your inspiration to get started and like, hey, I actually want to be in charge of these things?
Yeah. Well, I've said it before, like I've always liked music, and I pursued business as like a thing that I went to college for, and I've always kind of gravitated towards that sphere. But I've never been a guy who like, tell me what you want to do in 5 years, tell me what you want to do in 10. Like I don't plan long term. I just kind of go by what feels right and make sure I am set up and I'm supporting myself and working when I need to and different things like that. And when meeting Helen and getting to promotion was really funny, because I think this was her story, because I didn't really quite know. She just hit me up and was like, do you want to get a bite at Qdoba? And I drove to Anchorage from Traffic Creek to get Qdoba with Helen, and then drove home, because I was gearing up to move to Anchorage to go to school. And obviously our band was doing well enough
So
that
it's good
we should
network.
move. Natural networking, I guess. And
I'm going to drive 3 hours
for a burrito. And what her story is that when my band played, it might have been that Callahan show. I don't remember specifically what, but high school prom was like not like a week after, and I had gotten fitted for a tux, and I had a blue tux when I walked in for sound check, and I had a mohawk shaved into my head because I cut my finger really badly, and she was like had to bandage me, and she was saying, and I kept just being like, doesn't matter, it's a scratch. I had fun, and I was just like, She just told me she liked my positivity,
Yeah.
and she liked this character that I guess I was at that time.
That's fun.
And so, for whatever reason, she was like seeking an intern, quote unquote, and then she just settled on me. For whatever reason, she chose me.
That guy in the blue suit,
I guess.
the
He's
mohawk.
got something.
He's got grit. He's
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
guts. I
Yeah.
like him. Yeah, that's fun.
So yeah, I got into that world, and basically it was an unofficial, not college credited internship where I was working for Helen when she was still doing Club Millennium in the downstairs. When she was like one of the first shows that she did, I think was Dance Gavin Dance when I came on board, and like she was in that
That's
kind
a
of
big
world.
band.
She was in that world of like bringing like really solid artists to town. Between I think I always call Kurt Bundy, who you know too, like my grandpa promoter, because he like interned Helen and Helen interned me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I learned pretty much like the next few years going to school and working and being in bands. I was throwing shows with Helen and then working other shows as kind of just like be here and do this thing. Like I'm going to keep shouting out Jens. Jens can relate. We would work foam parties until like 5 a.m. And this is not our world. We're like metal kids and we're like scrubbing foam off of the floor and like doing all these crazy things just for the love of the game.
I always
you know?
wondered who cleaned up after us.
Oh, that's me, buddy.
Yeah.
That was me.
Probably not just foam.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no.
There's probably a lot of stuff there. But
No, but she trusted me to do a lot of these things behind the scenes, these random little tasks, and staying up crazy late and still going to school. And it progressed to the point where I was starting to throw my own local shows, or she was kind of giving me the reins. Like, you're more in tune with certain parts of this world than I am, because she's a few years older than me, and it changes so fast. Like in terms of like, this is what's popular here now, and it's usually the younger kids, and you fall out of that age quick, as we all know, in their 30s and post 30s. Like, oh, I don't know what's cool anymore, And it just worked so that I got to throw my own shows, and that kind of just built into my organizational world where I was kind of like combo. Again, Helen taught me everything. Like, as entering under, it was like a combo of like taste making and seeing what doesn't work and does work, and coordinating with 5 bands somehow to show up on time. And these were not paying shows because it was like an all ages scene where that was the culture then, which ethically you should pay artists, especially when it makes sense. But this was like a love of the game, as you guys all know, because you all said yes to these shows, and we were all like DIY in spirit, where we were making money on merch, didn't care if the venue was in Vegas. We knew the venue was breaking even for the most part, so it was like, it was for the love of the game and like developing yourself and like being a part of this culture. And I know I kind of missed the heyday by just a slim margin. I hear stories about the bands that came before me where it was like 500 people at every show, and my era was more like a couple hundred people at every show, which is still sick. It's nothing to bat an eye at, but so I got to be a part of that in the last year or so when it was the downstairs, and it pivoted to the Fiesta room, where Helen and I like took it to a smaller room and would do different genres and just try to put together these different all age band bills where, God, we were not making money at all. It was really for the love of the game. And like, so I cut my teeth doing a lot of promoter stuff throughout school, doing this with Helen, who was really just, it's crazy the amount of blood and sweat equity she put into those places, into the local musicians, and she still does. But, I learned a lot of passion from that. And then it kind of bled into, I know I'm like speeding through because some of the details, it's like there's so much to talk about. And I don't want to dwell too long in any one spot. But as my band Griffith, like this whole time, like we did our thing. We had our like heyday, quote unquote, where we like played bigger shows, and we got to play a couple shows out of state. Got to play like a couple Warped Tour dates and things like that.
Yeah, you beat us in the Battle of the Bands.
I wasn't gonna rub it in, Steven.
Yeah, you should. You should, because it's fucking cool. It's fucking cool that you did it.
Hey, we never toured the UK, man. We just did the Pacific Northwest. You know?
We went broke for that tour
Hey,
because it was all
so
out
did
of pocket.
we.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I think one of our bandmates is still paying off that tour.
Oh
man.
God,
that's how expensive it was.
It's my band. We did a lot of cool stuff during this time. It was a heyday for us. A heyday for me as a musician. And the biggest thing I can flex is like, the Rise Records guys almost watched our set at Warped Tour, but they said we played too early.
They walked right by at the wrong time.
That's a good flex. Right
there. Nothing. But anyway, so my band kind of like, we slowed down, and like the rest of that band's tenor was more like we'd play a couple shows here and there, have a lot of fun, but we didn't put out any more records after that. We didn't really do any like, big ambitious things. It just adulthood in life and the normal monetization isn't there, and people have to change priorities, not because of a lack of love, but because like you have kids, you have to move on. This job is taking a lot out of you. And normal things that like we all take for granted once we're not 20 anymore, right? Like you're not 19, you don't have all the time in the world, and like the ear of so many of your friends who maybe don't even like your band, like the amount of my Talkeetna and Trapper Creek friends who'd watch my band who hated the genre we were in. It's incredible, and that'll never happen again. You know what I mean? Things like that. But so as that winded down, I got more involved. Helen always kind of likes to, I hope she's listening because I hope she laughs when I say this, but she always tries to pull me into wherever orbit she's in. She's always trying to get me to work adjacent to her somewhere. And she convinced Ray Flores, who, co-owns Showdown with Helen now and owns Shirts Up. And I worked at Shirts Up for 5 years. She was like, yeah, you should hire Mac to like clean screens at the shop. And I was like his third employee or whatever. And I worked in merch for 5 years after. But, Helen eventually came to work at Shirts Up. And it became like this big family thing where they're, Ray and Helen, they like birthed Showdown as we know it today, which is still, it's the biggest it's ever been.
Yeah.
Sundown, this is obviously going to come out after, but like today, Sundown got announced and it blows my mind what Ray and Helen put together.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane to see how far they've come with talent buying, their connections, like the whole gamut. And I was around for those early days when they were putting it together because I'm always gunning for Helen's vision, and I'm always gunning, Ray became a part of that too because he got brought into the mix to put shop equity towards these shows that never made money and just try to get your foot in the door because Showdown started as like mostly just national acts and not just the local things where we cut our teeth. And that's no shade to local, but like, you can help cultivate a culture by also bringing outside influence and letting people cook internally to like play these shows and these different things. And yeah, so I got brought in the mix early there in the sense that I was always around at the shop when they were staying up till forever. And, Helen knew I had that ambition, the ability to throw shows. And I went to school for business management and economics, which I have a big brain for economics, which who knows if we'll delve in this topic. And I doubt the listeners want to hear me talk about economics.
Everybody loves economics.
I was going to say, man, like, just talk about it if you want to talk about it.
All I'm going to say, I'm going to shout Kyle real quick. I was like posted on Facebook, hey, I need to take a business elective. Kyle over here, finance major, correct?
Yeah.
I was in business management. He goes, take Kyle Hampton, Econ 101. And I did, and I chose it as a minor because of that class, which is still a big part of just how I think I love the subject. So like I kind of had a brain for these things, and I had, quote unquote formal education, quote unquote means nothing. It's just a tool to do what you want to do with it. Yeah. To be able to like put together budgets and make offers and negotiate and like try to do the whole logistics of getting a band out of state to play here, and will it do well? Will it won't do well? And so like in the earlier days, I was able to like I co-produced a couple shows in the sense that like I was like, hey, we should bring this band up, and Ray was like, well, put your money in your mouth, is put half down, and I'm like, okay, and then we would like lose money on it, both of us.
Damn.
Shout out to those bands. They were ones I believed in, but it helped me adjust and learn that like promoter is both it's a bit of taste making, but also what do people want. And Anchorage, Anchorage is a real it's a random place. I tell you, the tastes of people. Yep. I think I saw Helen say that on Twitter today about the Sundown. Like, hey, it's a random city. This is a random lineup.
Yeah.
People ideally love it, But it took a while to get there because you want to book your own interests all the time. Like, I like this band. People here should love them. And you're like, oh, that doesn't work.
I know. That's the one thing too. Like, I mean, every time I'm like, I go to Ray and Helen, like, or Sarah P or whoever, like, oh, you should book this band. And they're like, we already looked. Like, first off, it's not going to fly here. And like, like Architects, right? Right. I was like, before Architects are playing like 10,000 people,
Stadiums.
I was like, Sarah, you should bring them up. Or Helen, Ray, you should bring them up. And it's like, I don't know if they're gonna do good up here. You just don't know.
And it's no one's fault for not understanding that. I always got to check myself because when you were involved with something for a long time, which I've been involved in music to a degree for a long time, but I've been like specifically more in the industry business side of the world for almost like a decade now, starting with, interning at a local venue and putting together local shows, and then progressing under the umbrella of Ray and Helen and Showdown, who I'm always thankful gave me those chances in those early days to like try to do shows under the umbrella. It's a whole thing that you like learn. You just so many little things. You have to be in that world for a long time to really get a lot of background details. So I'm not going to be here and try to be like, are you kidding me? Why would you think that's a good idea? And like, what you understand it's 20 flights, right? And like these different things like that. Like there's just a million things that make a show work. And we still learn all the time, and it can always change on a dime. I'm going to quote Dave Shapiro here. He was like, because funny enough, I took like an online class with him once and then we became friends later. He did like a agent relationship type of online course.
He taught it?
Mm-hmm. It was just a one-time only like Skype class. And I signed up for it. And that's how I like met him initially. And then we've hung out a few times since. shotguns on his porch and everything.
Before he had a house up here?
Yeah. So when he moved here, I was among some early people he hit up and ended up shooting.
Shit.
Explain who Dave is.
Sorry. Yeah. I understand. Dave Shapiro is an agent with a huge roster of very notable bands. You've probably heard of at least one of them on his roster. We've booked a few over the years. Sarah P works for him, Sarah Peterson, if people know her. But yeah, he's got an insane roster of artists, many of which have played Alaska for a long time, and even Sundown has a few of his artists on it. But he's a behind-the-scenes guy with like a big clientele of artists that he books shows for.
It is funny how you're like, you probably have heard of one of his bands. Because I guarantee, even my parents, mom and dad love you. Like, it's like you say, like, August Burns Red or something.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah, I've heard you guys talk about him. It's like, yeah, well, he's got his hands in that. He does have a lot.
Yeah.
He does do a lot.
Yeah, I think the one that worked for my parents when I tried to describe Dave, because I was like, yeah, I just hung out with this guy, Dave, and he's an agent. My dad's like, oh, yeah, who? And I was like, Hanson. And he was like, oh, yeah.
Bop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad's playing that record on repeat.
Right. Where was I going with this? We were talking about and it's just like a million things behind the scenes that make something work. And I'm never going to shun somebody for not understanding things because you just have to try and fail like we did for a long time to kind of get these all these million little variables that go into behind the scenes stuff.
I think it's the same with anything. You see a YouTube success, right? But you don't see the work that they put in. Even I think Nick, Medium Build, when he was on here, people are getting on board now. People see him now, but they don't see the 10 plus years he's put into it. I think that's the same with anything.
Who here on this podcast remember seeing Nick Carpenter in a sweaty room of 8 people in someone's living room? That happened years ago.
Not me. Yeah. Oh, fuck. Matt.
Yeah.
Matt did. But I think a lot of people don't think about what goes behind the scenes or what takes time to get up to that point.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's kind of why I gravitated more and more towards that region. The quote I'm rewinding a sec. Dave Shapiro said,
the quote, yeah.
Show promoting is educated gambling, which is very true. You just take a big bet and you see if it works because there's so many things. A blizzard can mess up in a show that otherwise would have done good, or just, I don't know, or it was the wrong time of the month, or you're like UAA and you book Macklemore and he puts out Thrift Shop a month later. You know what I mean? You never know.
Did he do that?
Oh yeah, they had him locked in before Thrift Shop came out, and obviously Macklemore, Grammys, you name it. But anyways,
who? No, I'm just
yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. Good timing.
But I think that's why I gravitated towards that realm, and maybe it ties into why I liked economics so much. Is I'm always curious why things exist the way that they do, and why things are. I try to understand the world by wants and needs, and why things develop, and what systems lead to outcomes. And my brain kind of works. I'm not good with numbers. I'm not super analytical. I'm very art forward, art focused, but I'm not a traditional artist. I don't even consider myself a musician, despite talking about playing drums not that long ago. It's just a thing where I always love the art. I'm magnetized towards art and music, but I have a natural inclination towards back end things to make things exist or put organizational structures together or to manage things behind the music because I'm not natural or skilled at playing instruments outside of drums and just art brain and we all know the type, the artisan type. I
would call you a musician though.
I won't argue.
Are you saying you're defining a musician if you're you play in an orchestra or you can read music or
no, we all know the working types and it's just I've never been someone who can really read music well. I'm not somebody who can record to a metronome super well. I have and it's hard, but it's not natural to me and I even look at somebody like Ray, who does so much of the production for Showdown shows, which if anybody here has seen it, you see the insane level of work, and he collaborates with a lot of people locally. But he has such a natural inclination towards designing lighting fixtures and that stuff is even though I've toured as an assistant LD and even still that goes over my head.
That's a lighting director.
Yeah.
Assistant lighting director.
Thank you. Always call out if I throw out a term because I get frustrated when other people do it in other industries and I'm like, oh, I do it all the time. I just said it.
I know I do it
LD.
too. AD. Oh yeah. I was just talking to my DP. DP? Director of photography. Yeah.
Double. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I got you.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
I use music industry terms because my entire mom's side of the family, they're all medical, and we have Thanksgiving, and they're DNP, code red, all these things, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, so I like to make fun of them, oh, half cap room, partially sold, underplayed venue, and they're like, what are you talking? I'm like, that's how it sounds, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think my inclination is I think. And these are things you only really meditate on as you understand yourself as you get older. I'm 30. I'm not old, but nor am I young, kind of thing. And the more I've understood myself, like I've gravitated towards I like connecting with people, and I really like art, and I really like putting the work into planning, and not so much event management anymore. I did that for a long time. Shout out Chelsea with Showdown. You have a natural knack for it, and you take on stress that I have a hard time with.
Shouting out everybody.
I love this community.
If they don't listen to this podcast for these shout outs, I'll be pissed.
We're gonna tag each and every one.
Yeah,
of
we
them.
should.
That's
Chelsea,
what we're gonna
Jens, Brandon,
You'll get
Ray, Helen.
You'll at least get a listener out of a couple of those people. Anyways, just like the more I learn about myself, like I like to say, like just like I said earlier, cool adjacent. I'm like art adjacent. Like I wasn't the one designing, but I was printing it. I was screen printing when I worked in merch. Like that is an art form, sure, but like I love my home is filled with like framed art pieces and prints, and I love to print art. And I. Like now, like what I do, like I obviously miss the high of playing drums and writing with my friends, quite a bit of work. But we working in the music, you see people who are like, hey, can you fill in and be my touring guitarist? And they're like, cool, just send me your songbook. And they learn it in a week and they go and perform. And I'm like, it would take like a year of prep for me to do something.
Right.
I say that now, but if someone needs a touring drummer, let me know. But yeah, like my natural inclination is I think that I'm good at connecting to people, and I think that I like connecting to people, and I like being around artists and supporting them as artists.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of brain kind of sets you up to work on the behind the scenes industry thing where you're helping to, for a long time, I cut my teeth by throwing shows and events and doing all of these little jobs for these bigger events and these little things where I'm, supporting Helen and Ray's vision in this way and this way. And sometimes I'm just cleaning up at phone parties, whatever, but that's what kind of motivates me. And I think being so personable, that's kind of like how it, we all grew up, everyone here is like from Alaska. You grow up and you love Alaska, and you don't always love Alaska, and you want to move, you want to leave, you want to do whatever. You're in the arts, which is harder to do from here, which thankfully so many people are proving incorrect between Quinn and Nick and even Cole with Ralph Castelli. Like you don't have to like always be away from Alaska to do it in the art world, especially the industry world. And I've been able to find a niche where like I at least like I'm good at connecting to people. Like there was certainly shows and artists where like Ray or Helen had to send me in to kind of like calm a fire or like kind of like set them up with Mac. They'll get along, or these little things like that, because like I'm easygoing enough. I think I think I'm sure there's people who don't like me out there, but like I'm at least easygoing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Name them.
No,
Name.
I'm not.
What's their address? Where do they live?
No.
Sick them, Kyle.
No, and I'm an overthinker. I'm an anxious person, so I think that a lot of that, a million things tick and make a person who they are, and thankfully I've been able to find a way to refine mine that I can be involved in the arts, even if it's not performing on the stage, which is I'm very proud to be that.
There's something you just said that sparked something in my brain, and I know you're passionate and you've talked about it and you're open about it, is your anxiety. You just said it, right? And you're overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would imagine, well, I know this for a fact because I did show promotion for one time.
Emory.
Yeah, one time. And I was like, oh, I might as well make it like this fucking like 20 bands and like local artists, and I might make it as big as possible with inflatables and sponsors. And I was stressed. I was stressed the whole time. It was not an enjoyable experience, and that's why I've never done it. And I can totally understand overthinking.
He hasn't recovered yet.
No. I think I talked to the guy who supplied the money for that show, and I think I talked to him like 2-3 years ago. Now, this was back in 2010 when I did that show.
I remember.
He was like, I'm still paying that show off. Woo. And we're talking, that was like 28, it had to been 2019, 2020, something like that. Yeah, he's like, I'm still fucking with those bills. Yeah. And I was like, well, shit, man. Thanks, I guess. I had this idea. And
see you later.
Yeah. No, I love Joe.
Yeah.
But anyway, so overthinking and anxiety, I would imagine that's something that like is very prevalent in the music industry business, especially behind the scenes. As an artist, you get to roll up, do sound check, maybe, not if you're a riffraff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listen to the Grant podcast. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, but you do sound check, and then you hang out, and then you play the show, and then you leave. And like, that's the glamour of it, right? But they don't see what goes behind it, and they don't see the stress. They don't see the selling of ticket prices or marketing or all this stuff. And so it's like, when you were working with that stuff, how did you kind of deal with that aspect of production.
I'll definitely talk mental health for a second here, and I'll definitely say I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not here to lay the land in terms
But Kyle
of
and I are doctors.
I am.
Dr. Cornfield, Dr. Reading. Yeah,
Yeah.
got you guys. Okay, doctor to doctor. Okay. No, so I have a pretty I have a genetic disposition for high anxiety and depression as well. Super common. Most people listening can relate to that for sure. I didn't really have a buckle on that until I hit my mid-20s. I think that my high natural anxiety, and I for sure wrestled with depression as a kid, off and on here. The self-awareness has allowed me to kind of come to terms with it a lot and deal with it and manage it. But I did hit a breaking point where there was a long time where I think my high drive work ethic and ambition between my band and my work and my personal relationships and promoting shows, it worked for me, like using that anxiety to kind of like propel you because you can distract yourself. And if you have the energy, you can push it into this and push it into this. And doing all these things, promoting and working and doing all these career things, I think that I had the drive that was driven by anxiety, the fuel that was anxiety, it got me to some places, but eventually I hit a breaking point and like a rubber band snapped or whatever you want to say. From what I understand, a lot of mental dispositions really start becoming prevalent in the mid-20s for a lot of male adults. And I sit here and I'm not classically medicated for any of those things. I have other family members that are. And I hit a wall where I had a really particularly stressful time in the thick of promoting and do these other things where I had my first like real panic attack. And it was in the Denver airport. I was coming back from a show, and I was suppressing all that anxiety for so long, and I was about 25, 26. I don't remember exactly how old I was. And I was suppressing it for so long that I hit the breaking point, and I was like probably drinking too much at that time. I didn't understand tolerance. I didn't start drinking until I was like 22. So I was turning 21 at a later age, or 18, or whenever people traditionally would start like, learning your alcohol relationship or whatever. And I remember I had an extreme panic attack, and I like blacked out, and I, called like the ambulance, and I was like scared because my family that has it, they're pretty open about it, but I didn't always believe it necessarily. And then I finally happened to me, and I think I saw a doctor for it because I thought I was dying, of course, as many can relate when you have those incidents and those moments. And basically I ended up doing therapy through the UAA psych program. I didn't have a lot of money at this time. And I was seen by somebody who was training to be a psychiatrist, but had like a decade of like family rehabilitation under his belt. So he was like highly trained to do this. And
he knew his shit.
In his brain, he's like, oh, this kid's just got anxiety. He'll figure it out real quick. Yeah. And that's kind of where it was, is I learned through seeing this guy, this therapist for the 3 months that I did, I learned meditation and self-awareness, and noting when you have kind of rises and different things and ways to medicate it like healthily, because I was in such a bad way that I was like begging him to put me on something because I just like didn't know what was happening, and I didn't understand. Like I was like agoraphobic. I like couldn't leave the house, and it was so weird because so much of what I did was so like social and public facing, to which part of my self-awareness is learning I'm actually an introvert who can just put on a face, like frankly I haven't been on a podcast really, so like I was doing meditation breathing techniques on the way here just to be calm,
Yeah.
Doing some box breathing.
Yeah. I do like a 4-2-4.
Okay, yeah.
4-2-4.
I do a 4-4-4-4.
Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 4. Just listen to your breath. It's okay if your brain wanders. Do that, and you can kind of center yourself in the moment.
Is there an app you use?
Calm. Yeah. Calm. I'm going to switch to Headspace. I think my year membership runs out.
Yeah.
Headspace was mine for a while.
I'm going to switch to Headspace. Try it out. Calm like 3 years now, 4 years, but I learned a lot of that self-awareness, and I also deal with depression now and again. I recently experienced depression on tour, but the fact that I had these tools of self-awareness and I had support systems and there was tools I knew I could get to, it just helps me pummel through it even when you have those hard times. Like just being able to identify is like piece number one, I think. And I had to kind of learn all that stuff as I was going through a lot of bigger career changes and trajectories. And I'm like thankful that I'm at the other end without debilitating addictions. Sometimes, I'm just like, beer will chill me out, but like, come a long way from like, I need to like black out.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. I get that. I understand that. Yeah.
Totally.
I was going to say, what's your self-awareness like process look like? Because I think that's like and nothing towards you, but it's a really hot word within the last couple of years of like people becoming self-aware, and at the same time, like I've even used it, I think, about myself, but then I do find myself like I have these like corners that I don't see in myself that I'm aware of. And I find myself being like, I'm self-aware. And then I'll find myself like going down something. I'm like, I'm doing exactly like I'm not that self-aware that I think I am. So how does that look with you? Is it more self-awareness when you're starting to get a panic attack or something like that? Why this is happening? Like, where did you develop this and what's it like for you?
Oh, sure. Well, it was definitely during that really hard initial stages where I was having them a lot that I really had to confront it a lot. And I have a pretty good win on it as far as anxiety goes. I'm very, I'm self-aware of the anxiousness. Like I've just learned to detect the little clues in the notes. And I will say I have a natural disposition towards overthinking, which helps me in career aspects. Like being an overthinker is good for someone who has to manage an event or manage an artist or like tour manage. Like that's partially, do business and just different things like that. So like that, I have that natural disposition. So I'm always checking boxes when something feels off. I just kind of run down the noting list of like, okay, I'm breathing heavy. Is it my asthma? Which I also have asthma, and like, or in this, and I just run through like a checklist in my head. And maybe that comes with how I'm wired or whatever. But it pretty much, you just learn notes over time. And you read the end result enough that you build your routine for it. And so it's, self-awareness doesn't mean that you can stop what's happening sometimes.
Right.
Like there's something I learned from the trade of screen printing is there's 1,000 variables that can mess up a print, and there's 1,000 variables that can influence how you're feeling in any given hour. So like you can't always be the master of your domain at all times. And I think maybe it's a philosophical thing, but having the grace to admit that you're not perfect. Thankfully, my dad has always kind of not literally beaten, but over and over again instilled like intellectual curiosity is important in a person. And if you can be really at peace with not knowing everything while just doing your best and having grace for others, then it can go a long way. I've recently become to lionize like a Mr. Rogers for that reason. You know what I mean? About not idolizing perfection. I used to be a perfectionist, and it helped me be more anxious than I deserved to be at the time, maybe.
I know.
Or deserved to be, but learned.
I think that's a good sign of a creative, an artist. Well, no, I'm serious. I mean, like, we've talked about it a bunch on here, and I feel like there is a lot of, perfectionism when it comes to making and creating art in general. And so, I mean, like, I still struggle with perfectionism and overthinking and, like, being like, oh my gosh, what if this isn't perfect?
It's human.
100%. It's totally fine. But it is like when it starts to become an issue. And so that's really interesting that you kind of like, you're being aware of that. And I think that's the step one.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost like it can be the hardest or the easiest, whatever you want. But like just being aware of your perfectionism or your overthinking or your anxiety is like, healthy. And so that's kind of cool that you've already like, you've been able to calm yourself and you found these little tactics. Is there any other tactics that you use besides like the meditating, the breathing?
Just recognizing stimulation at times, like I work in a field of live music where you're screaming over people just to, sell them a shirt or figure out what needs to go on stage. So I have a pretty good ability to like distance myself from a stimulation, but there's others that I realize hit me in a certain way, and it's hard for me to articulate more than that. Self-awareness is a real blanket term, but you just kind of grow all the time and be aware.
But I think that's the best term for it because that is like I said, the first step. I am curious though, so you're. Let's get back to the timeline. Is like you're in promotion, you're organizing shows. How do you make that shift from that to going on tour with bands?
Sure,
and being a tour manager, and what did that look like?
Yeah, that's the sort of the last general chapter of where we're at in this timeline. How there's a million details we didn't talk about because nobody wants to hear 9 hours on my life or anything like that. But like,
I think you'd be surprised.
No.
Your girlfriend's listening.
Sure. Yeah, shout out Addie. Yeah. So the leap kind of went like this. It was literally just as easy as I was doing all the things I just talked about with Shirts Up, Showdown, all these different things. And I was co-producing some shows, and even still it was hospitality for others. But there was a handful of artists that I worked with Ray and Helen to get up here, and Alaska is different than a lot of other places that we often will be hosting an artist and showing them around because that's kind of the appeal. I'm going to sound a little industry here, but Alaska is considered a fly-out destination for shows and artists. Typical tours in the lower 48, it's a bus pulls up to the building. the artists go in, they sound check, they play, they bounce out. Most of the time, they don't meet a promoter unless the tour manager's collecting a check, or occasionally, few far between, they'll come shake hands if they're a fan or if they're just in the building at the time. In Alaska, a lot of promoters here treat it like, hey, like we know it's hard to come here, and it doesn't always pay the best to come here. So it's like people come here because they want to see the mountains, they want to see the bears and see the moose, all that.
They want an experience, an adventure.
And that was part of the scrappiness of Showdown is like, well, hey, we can't always cut the highest deal because we're not making money on beer like other places. You know, it's purely ticket sales for us. So we really would emphasize like we're going to show you around, and because of that, you get some one-on-one time with artists. And some of the artists that I was bringing to Alaska didn't always have a tour manager, but even still,
drop those names.
Sure.
Drop them.
So the first band that I ever brought to Alaska from out of state was 68, Josh Scoggin Band. Loved it. Great shows.
Josh Scoggin from The Chariot.
Norma Jean.
Yep.
Yeah, in which not every Alaskan understood the reference. It was after the fact where people were like, oh, he was in those bands. I should have went. And I was like, yeah, thanks. I lost money.
Jesus.
Yeah. And
I was
then,
halvesies on that one.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And the second artist that was national that I brought to Alaska was Touche Amore, who I have now employs me, which is great. Full circle stuff. Third artist was Census Fail. It was the first time I made money on a national show.
I remember you were excited about that one.
Very, very excited.
Did you watch their Joshua Tree one? Their live show?
I haven't, no.
They did not a pay-per-view, but like...
Oh, I have seen it. Yep.
Yeah.
It was good.
That
Okay.
was really
That
good.
was during the lockdowns because a lot of artists were doing the streaming events.
The streaming, yeah.
That was a good one. Yeah.
I love Census Fail. Like,
Oh, great band.
oh,
Fun to work with.
Kyle just went from 6 to midnight.
again, 2
They're a good
podcasts
band.
in a row.
Yeah.
Or 3. Who knows?
And then the next artist I brought was K-Flay. I like pivoted a little bit out of the rock world because at this point,
I miss K-Flay.
Oh,
I was
good
I was
show.
I was just really bummed. And then I mean I missed. I don't say I miss. I didn't meet her, but no, I missed the show, and I was really bummed because I heard it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I heard she did really good.
Well, I will say from a promoter standpoint, it was really scary because I took a limb because at this point, obviously my taste was expanding. I've long since dropped that has to be rock, it has to be hardcore, influenced by my surroundings. I'm growing an appreciation for all genres, all things. And I was like, yeah, it'd be really cool to do something outside of my comfort zone in terms of like genre. And I was like, K-Flay at the time was more like hip hop, indie, all these different pop, some rock influence, just everything, kind of one of those transient genre artists. And the pre-sale was horrible. Like they almost thought about canceling it because I only sold like 30 tickets. And then like the day of, the walk-up was like 500-600 at Willow Wow. And this is before Willow Wow was what it is now, which is more branded, more known destination. This is when they were still kind of like developing that foothold. So like it was literally like they almost canceled it and we almost canceled it. And then it just worked out where people showed up the day of, and it was a great show. And that particular weekend, same thing. It's like hosting, showing them around. At the time, she was having some issues with her tour manager. It was like fairly new tour manager to her. And there was some struggles with when they were here. She wasn't doing this, wasn't doing this, and it was kind of stressful for her. And they did a whole Europe tour with Paris after that. And she just like, she's, I'll say this about Christine K-Flay. She's like such a sweet person. She's memory of an elephant, never needed set list, the sweetest person ever. She basically was like, hey, you should just meet my manager. I like you. You should just meet him sometime if you're ever in LA. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And like my gut was like telling me like, yeah, I should do that sometime. And I went to FYF Festival with Helen. We moshed to Missy Elliott. Shout out Missy Elliott.
She's definitely listening.
She's got it by now.
If I can say anything, Missy's on this podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Missy Elliott. Shout outs. We went to this festival and I was like, I'm gonna hit up Christine's manager. His name's Seth. And I was like, hey, Seth, Christine says we should get a coffee. And he was just like, yeah, sounds cool. And we I Ubered to wherever his neighborhood was in LA. And we had a coffee and we just talked about whatever and talked about Christine and like the Alaska show and just kind of anything, just kind of like a vibe thing. And she was right. Like premonition was like, we did get along. He was a really cool guy. And he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I didn't even like think about it. I didn't overanalyze this moment. I was just like, I've never really seen a lot of the country. I'd really love to tour. I don't know, tour manage, something like that. And he was like, all right. And then like a month later, he's like, hey, we have room for a stage tech on this tour. Do you want to come? You want to do it? And I was like,
sounds fun.
Yeah. And it was kind of like a question mark. We don't really know what you're going to do yet, but we'll figure it out when you get here. And I'm like, so nervous. This was like January 2018. It was the first national tour I did. And it was like a bus tour with Wi-Fi and a whole crew. A lot of this crew we still keep up. A lot of the band we still keep up. They're all doing crazy different things now. But like, yeah, I was already brought on, and I was tuning guitars and basses during the set and handing them off because she had a band of like 3. I was setting up LED walls. I was working like 10 hours a day. Like, I mean, thank God it was a bus tour because it was like 10 hours of labor a day. And I was helping run the VIP with the photographer who was also doing VIP, and it was like a whole thing. And most of the venues are like 1,200 and sold out. And
Oh, wow.
it was like a really cool first national tour, and it felt very like cool and rewarding, fulfilling, and so many stories. And you know, like I came back and like I ended up coming back to like a situation where I wasn't very financially stable. It wasn't like a high paying gig. It was more of an experience one, and it was just because of the size of the tour and what I agreed to, and it was my first tour and all these different things. And I was basically unable to tour for a little while because I was invited back and I couldn't make it work, and I had obligations to my jobs here. Had obligations. I was so confused on like what I wanted to do because it was going to require a huge leap to keep doing that full time, and I was so scared because it's hard to break into that world because you basically just make, when you have the competence, and you know, I guess in my case it was a background in business and management because I'd work in other. I won't dwell on these, but like besides screen printing, I worked other jobs where I was adjacent to creativity. I worked in an agency for a while where I was doing production coordinating and helping shoot commercials. And I think I got you hired to a gig or two over there.
You did.
And, you know, I was like...
Some would say that you started where my career is at.
Whoa.
Yeah, I would say, because let's talk, because I wanted to talk about this. So since you brought it up, you got me in the door with one of the bigger agencies here.
Yeah.
And then just for music making, because I was composing tracks, commercial scores.
It's amazing what a community can do if you just care and are nice to somebody.
Because of that, I met some people. And then now those people follow me on social media, and I post some stuff, and then they see something, and then they're like, oh, hey, we have this job coming up. You should do this, and boom, boom, bada bing. So honestly, I've thought about this a lot. I think you might have started my career.
Hey,
maybe.
Yeah. Steven, you are the star. You did your thing. I like to connect people, and all I did was that, and you took it away. It's all you, man.
Thank you for saying that. But also, like, I think it's kind of cool. The people, you know, even talking to K-Flay and the tour manager, the people you meet, you have no idea what kind of impact they could have on your life.
Really?
Right?
Yeah. Solid point.
You know, your text that you sent to the tour manager, you could have been like, you know, I'd rather just stay at the festival, hang out with Helen.
Yeah.
I don't feel like going.
Yeah.
But you did it. And I think, you know, there's a test to that. And then all of a sudden, boom, next thing you know, you're on a tour. And then next thing you know, you're doing this and you're doing that. So now here you are. I mean, of course, we're moving ahead.
Right.
I want to hear kind of where you got to where Touche is.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of nitty gritty necessarily. We're not going to delve. I know this is we don't have to go too long on the podcast. I will say this round robin. If you say that me connecting you to one person at the agency I used to work with kind of helped launch where you are now in your career. Hey, look, maybe I wouldn't have been there if I didn't minor in economics, which Kyle suggested I take this professor.
I think Steven owes us both royalty checks.
That's
to
true.
be honest.
That's what I'm saying.
To some extent, we need some compensation.
This is an intervention, Steven. Kyle and I have planned this.
First off, nobody signed any contracts.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're talking about. Nobody, the audience does not agree with you.
Yeah, they booed.
Yeah.
That was a boo.
That was a big old boo.
That sounds like a boo to me.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, you're on tour with K-Flay, and then skip ahead to like Touche and where that is, because those are some pretty fucking big shows.
Yeah.
And I just saw you were in like LA not too long ago.
15th anniversary show.
It was like a sold out show.
Very.
I was like, holy fuck, that's so cool. Not only for like them, but also you to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's so much fun.
So I did that K-Flay tour, and when it ended, I was in a really difficult crossroads where I don't think I was ready to really be in that life. A lot of different factors. That's also when my mental health was starting to bubble. It was that year that I had those panic attacks and kind of had to shut myself down for a few months and like go to therapy and do the things that would help me.
Kudos to you for even like realizing that you needed to go to therapy. And
it was
take
hard.
Care of it.
It was really hard, and it was easier to do with family and support and friends, and just telling you like, oh, good on you, like, you know, do that, do things that make you well, and you know, and it's not that I don't need those tools still every once in a while. It's never really goes away. You just learn how to manage it, but. Anyways, so that happened, different things here or there. You know, I worked a few jobs that were art adjacent, agency, just different things that I was always kind of had my hands somewhere in the creative field to some degree at some point. And did a couple personal ventures. You know, I did a tiny clothing brand where I put my dog like on a hoodie,
Wolf
basically.
Fun?
Yeah, Wolf Fun. Shout out if anybody has any of that merch.
I don't.
I did not
I'm really
make very
bummed.
much.
I'm really bummed I didn't get anything.
The pandemic that threw everything off. I probably would still be doing something if that didn't happen. That kind of derailed it because it was like clothing, and it was an avenue for me to be creative. Like I was doing coffee collaborations. I was putting merch out there. I was sending merch out.
You still could pick it up. I still think you could.
I'm always doing little things. Wolf Fun's never dead. I just haven't done anything for a long time, and it might not come back either. So like, you never know. It's somewhere in the ethereal world, and maybe it'll pick it back up.
Yeah.
It's like cutting caliber, you know?
Yeah,
it's not
Cut
dead.
Caliber's not dead, but it could come
It's
back.
just out there.
It's dead.
Creative endeavors, right?
Yeah.
Zombies,
Just
you know,
things.
happen.
Yeah, that's
we can
true.
bring it
That's
back.
true.
So the thing that shut the world down happened. I worked in luxury tourism that whole time, where I was doing tours for wealthy tourists, where I was putting together like itineraries that were 2 or 3 weeks long, and people would spend like $100,000 to be here for a week.
Whoa,
and I
didn't know you did that.
through the
I didn't
whole,
even know that existed. I mean, I guess I knew that existed, but I didn't know.
I knew it existed.
Wow. Kyle's like,
I've been doing it.
Yeah,
I've been
Yeah,
paying
familiar.
for those tours.
Yeah.
Kyle. Yeah.
I started in that world literally a month before COVID started, and then I thankfully was at a job that got enough of a relief fund that I kept a job throughout the pandemic, just doing like really guarded like luxury tourism, where there would be a private guide who had to be vaccinated and they had to wear masks and they were isolated. It was crazy.
Oh, man.
But I was doing like that world, which again is another extension of things that I already do, right? Like logistics and planning and budgeting and like managing people, because there were also clients, because I was selling them this big luxury Alaska package and these different things, and super hands-on with people. And I was doing that throughout, and I was already kind of getting tired of it. And I'm not like here to slander anything. It just was like, wasn't for me. Like it wasn't working out, ceiling, whatever. And I was already like thinking about a career shift. And this is kind of, one of the beautiful things is when I did that first tour with K-Flay, which like was immensely like did a lot for me, but I had to learn a lot after that, and I had to deal with a lot of crossroads, and needed to learn how to like be a functional kind person when I got back, and not let things go to my head, because it's just little things, little crew things, whatever. Where again, I was like tuning guitars and doing all sorts of crazy stuff for that one. And I had mentioned that I had brought Touche Amore to Alaska, and they're a touring DIY working class band from the hardcore and post-hardcore world. They didn't come up with a tour manager or anything like that, and I showed them around, got along with them great, kept in touch with them. You connect with people, and at the end of the day, my favorite thing about music, art, all of it is I love connecting with people. I love art. I love how people do it. I like how people tick. My favorite stories from tour and not tour are just character related. I love interesting people and like things that they put out into the world. Pandemic is lifting, where things are normalizing again. Like people are going out again, some masking, not masking, and all that. Shows were starting to lift back up again, and Showdown was starting to do stuff again. And I was kind of looking at it in my career, and I got this text from Jeremy from Touche Amore, he's the singer, and he goes, "Hey, this is random. You've toured before, right?" And I said, "Yeah, like 3 years ago." And he was like, he had visited, I had seen him in Alaska not that long prior. He had proposed to his girlfriend, Ashley, now fiance, here in Alaska. Oh, cool. And we met up for a coffee. And again, he was one of those people that I've just kept up with since I met him in 2015 when I brought him to Alaska. So 2015 to 2021, 6 years have gone by since I've really been around half of this band. I get a text from Jeremy. "You've toured once before, yeah?" "Sure have. What's up?"
Oh, hi, Jeremy, by the way.
Yeah.
God, way to say hi to me.
I think he said hi.
Just
I don't
kidding.
know.
I'm just
He was
kidding.
objective.
He's
whatever.
not a high guy.
No.
He's not a high guy.
Nope.
Right to business.
Yeah.
He goes, "This is going to sound wild, but we have a tour with Thrice in 2 weeks. Our normal tour manager is no longer available. How do you feel about tour managing and it started as tour managing, not merch."
Did you even hesitate?
Yeah, I was like, "What?" And I was already planning on like kind of getting out of my day job. And I was just like, this is incredible. Like I'm actually in a good place in life to do this, as opposed to I wasn't in a good place in life the last time I was given the offer years before a pandemic, which is heartbreaking in a lot of ways. Didn't think you're going to do the things that you want. You never know. The future's gray, whatever. And, I was just like scrambling. I was like, I think I can make this work. And at the time, my job was even like, you can just leave. You'll be a leave of absence or whatever.
Please leave.
Yeah.
Please.
Which I ended up quitting that job by the time the second tour came around anyway. But, I was like, I'm able to keep my job. I get to go on tour, which I've always wanted to do. I'm with my friends in a band I admire in Touche Amore, and it's supporting this other great band, Thrice.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
It was literally 2 weeks notice.
Cool.
2 weeks notice. And I'm going to talk about my partner, Addie, real quickly, too. We went on our first date like 10 days before I went on tour. And the date opens, we were at Tequila 61, and I'm like, we're just chatting. We only met each other like through Twitter. Funny enough, that's kind of where we met.
Really?
She was moving back from Portland, and we just connected. It's one of those classic like, oh, you're funny, you're clever, oh, you're cute too. We should meet each other. We're both like single, like things like that. And we had met, and I was like, hey, this is first time we're meeting each other, but I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks and 10 days. And I haven't really told that many people yet, like I'm going to be gone for like 6 weeks on tour. And she's like, oh, well, I'm a flight attendant. And I was like, so people are usually mad at me for being gone a lot. And I'm like, no kidding.
Cool.
And hey, mad in love, transient lifestyles, it works out. I'm thankful to have a partner who understands that, the coming and going, and she's able to visit me on tours, and it's just the best ever. She's the best ever. But
I love it.
Love her for a million reasons, but that has to play a part where my life was just on this up and up, where I'm like, I was asked to tour manage, which I had manifested that I wanted to do years prior, with a group that I hadn't seen in 6 years. They trusted me. I met a girl who was okay with this lifestyle and was supportive, and we just hit it off. And it was just like, I was on the up and up. Like I manifested this. I wanted this. I didn't realize I did. I had imposter syndrome for a long time over it. And then I got COVID and I had to miss the first 3 days of the tour. Oh. I had to wait twice. I said negative. I missed Furnace Festival. I missed all these things, but there was a blessing in all that, because this is when things were still highly, like many venues were requiring vaccination. Masking was still the norm as it was. It was still a precarious time. It was like vaccines had just come out. It's like fall of 2021, I guess is the time frame. Or 2022. Last year. It was about a year. Yeah, it was a year and a half ago. It was my first tour with them.
Yeah.
And so because I had missed COVID, I had spent like the whole 2 weeks. Here's another music industry term. It's called advancing. When you're a tour manager, it means that you're emailing all the venues and promoters, and you're making sure they have the stage specs, the rider, that they're going to be set up so that when you pull up, they know what you need. Everything you need is there. Pita chips, vegan stuff in the green room, all these green inputs M&Ms on the stage, things like that. I didn't have to do very much advancing because Thrice's team was primarily doing it. But one of the things that I was doing is, at the time, we were trying to be like, well, for COVID reasons, we should just hire local merch sellers everywhere we go, which is a whole thing. I had to tap into this big Rolodex of all these music industry people I've met over the years through touring, and like hiring old Alaskans who like moved to other places to like sell the merch for the band. And because I had COVID, and it was like the worst ever to break that news, where I caught it, I think, while wearing a mask. But as we all know, it can just happen. It doesn't matter. And I was vaccinated. It can be totally random. But I was like, God, this is a huge opportunity, and I have to miss the first couple of days. But I was like, thank God we set up all these merch sellers, because they'll be able to at least take care of that. And the band's so DIY, working class, that it's more like I'm a sixth man to them. I take care of all the little stuff they don't need. And it was just so difficult this first few days. It was so much communication lapses, and it's hard to train somebody on your point of sale and your merchandise on like 3 hours notice, when that's like half of your income. A lot of bands of that tier, the mid tier, they make X amount of money on their guarantees and their performance, and then they make almost equal amount on merch sales. Like I'm telling you, like it doubles their income. So like merch is really important in the music world, especially the mid tier. Merch can double the band's income. So it's important to like have people you trust selling it and orchestrating it and managing it, which I helped set up the initial quantities and these things, because I had so much experience producing and printing merch and things like that in the past. And so anyways, it worked out where Jeremy pulls me aside, goes, hey, like it's not going well to have these local sellers. It's just such a headache. And I feel like it's not the same, because like the whole point is to like for COVID reasons, but then we still have to interact with this person, has to interact with a lot of people. Hey, you just had COVID. Are you opposed to doing merch and tour managing? We're supporting Thrice. They're doing a lot of the big legwork. Like we've had other people in the past do it, and you can keep all the tips. And I'm like, oh, double my income, double your income. Yeah. And that worked out, because it doubled my income doing both. But it's a very niche role, because not every tour manager has the time to do it. Support runs, you have the time to do it with a mid-tier band. When we headline, I still have time, because the band is mostly doing 500, 600 cap rooms in the headline, unless it's in LA where it's 1,200 sold out immediately. But that's how that started. I had imposter syndrome that whole first 6-week tour with Thrice. I was nervous. I didn't understand it. I had COVID fog brain. It was a whirlwind. It was crazy. I met like a lot of insane people. I promised myself I wouldn't like name drop, but I love characters. I met Ross Robinson, who's like he produced like the first couple Slipknot records and like Korn, and like if you look up Ross Robinson, it's crazy what albums he's been responsible producing. And he happened to produce Touche Amore's Lament, their most recent record. They had him in the green room in LA, and Jeremy's like, Ross, this is my friend Mac, and he literally like looks me in the eyes and he's like, I think we've met in a different life, actually. like really like spacey. And I was like, there's so many little stories like that happened on that tour, which did not help my imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And then when I get home, I'm like, that was insane. It was really fulfilling. I really felt like they could trust me and they trusted me. And I helped make the thing seamless because, again, I know I skipped a few details. For non-industry folks, tour managers, it's like I said, it's all the non-performing aspects. It alleviates the burden of communicating with venues, setting schedules, just doing all those little things, sometimes like driving or reparking the van. Thankfully, the band, Touche, they're some of the best guys ever. And they're so DIY that it's easy to tour with them. They're really self-starters and it's a mellow bunch. It's easy to get along with. Didn't have to deal with high, strong personalities or anything like that. And then you just manage a lot of those things. And thankfully, I didn't have to manage a lot of big conflicts or anything. And then, you communicate, you collect the checks, you do all these different things. Tour gets out, and I'm like, again, imposter syndrome. I'm like, that doesn't feel right that I did that. And then they're like, oh, you want to come back in the spring? And I'm like, okay, this is like, all right, okay, I'm right to be in this position. And it felt good. And I've now done 3 tours with them. I've seen them 90 shows of Touche Amore that I've worked, met oodles of people, made lots of connections, and now they're taking some time off to just play festivals and write a record. So I'm off for a little while. Open to other tours, but I don't have to. It's a really nice position to be in. I don't have to tour, but I like to and I can. And just kind of like when I'm home, I make coffee, I pull shifts at Feeling Co. and hang out with my friends and do little endeavors and do stuff with Showdown and help with Sundown and different things like that. And it's a really nice place to be. And it's difficult being on the road for that long. But I'm trying to take it all not for granted that I can do those things and I can see so much of the country. For sure, you guys have traveled, you guys have toured too. It helps kind of bring it all home, not to, just carry on about things that I enjoyed on the road or little aspects, but I have gotten to see, I think I'm at 47 states at this point. It's some real random ones I haven't been to. What do you, just off the top, how many states do you think you guys have been to? 15?
50.
50. You've done 50?
I've done 50.
Whew.
Yeah.
Ooh, big deal. I don't know. I think I'm probably 38.
I think I just have Maine and Rhode Island, and then
I
one really random.
I got them all on the same trip. And I only, because my parents live in New York, and so we drove up to Maine, and then I was like, well, we have to go get Rhode Island.
We have to get the other 48.
Yeah. So we just did a big old road trip. No, we literally, I made them drive to Rhode Island and Connecticut, just so I could check it off.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at, where I'm all like, God, I'm so close to the 2 states I haven't been to. Which I honestly think it's Nebraska. It's something. I only counted if I've gotten out at a gas station at minimum, and you can catch a vibe.
Okay, so that's the thing. I'm
not counting airports.
Ooh.
I don't count airports too.
Posers.
If I drive, if I drive through it, I count it.
That's not. If I'm being honest, it's not that different than going to a Shell gas station.
Yeah,
and being like, oh, they sell those bumper stickers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, probably I stopped at gas stations, but I mean, basically, I remember
I feel like you got
a lot of road
to somebody
trips
in the state.
Yeah,
again,
yeah. You think so?
I feel like that's the rule. I'm making it now. Just because I'm making
that's a good rule.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like
that is a good rule.
What's the difference between flying over and driving through? You're not stopping.
Driving, flying over is faster, and also you're not looking out the window.
I agree, but
driving, you're looking at the landscape. Unless if you're driving.
I mean,
in my head,
I do
it
agree.
counts.
It probably counts, but it does feel a little bit airporty. You're flying to the airport.
Just
you're
let me have it, Kyle. Let me have it.
No,
let us have it. But yeah, okay, 47.
Yeah, that's respectable.
The point I think I was trying to get to is touring, and you meet so many different people and amazing people at all these different venues, and you see how things tick. And because I came from the promoter world, I've been on the side where I'm on the other end. I'm the one who's greeting the artist. So it's a nice rounded perspective. You meet wonderful people in all positions and jobs. And I grew up in Trapper Creek, so I'm a firm believer that everywhere is somewhere, right? I don't like writing places off. That being said, I can be a hater sometimes, about certain places or certain cities I don't love. But a lot of cities,
name one.
Name them.
I don't like Charlotte.
Oh, really?
Don't like it.
Oh, I've only been there.
He's
for
only
one time.
driven through there, so he doesn't know.
You're right.
Charlotte. Why not? Well, we don't have to get into it. But
no, I'll speak broadly to because that is kind of part of the point that I'm trying to get at. Is wonderful times with the band. They're great friends. you meet so many new people in all places. I never try to disrespect where someone came from because I came from Trapper Creek, and that so many people can write off a small town like that all the time. Like, people are shocked that I'm from Trapper Creek and I do what I do. And frankly, my neighbor, like, I have neighbors that are doctors and welders. Also, anyways, I believe everywhere is somewhere, and every good person can come from anywhere. But there's special things about where you can come from, and every city can have distinct flavors. But I will say that touring a lot of cities, and granted, as you guys know, touring, people are like, oh, it's like a vacation, right? You get to just do all this fun stuff. And you're like, no, I get to walk like within 10 blocks for 2 hours in between the show and set up sound check.
And so set up merch.
It's enough to catch a vibe in a city, but you don't really deep dive it or anything like that. But there are certain stretches, as 6 weeks on the road, and you want to see certain parts of the cities. Though it feels there's like a sterility to a lot of modern cities, in the sense that, like, sometimes, this is a theory I heard somewhere else, but they're like, the world is becoming an airport, if that makes sense. So you're like, I don't know, it doesn't matter where I am. It's the same Starbucks, it's the same City of America, it's the same craft brewery that has 3 IPAs on tap. You know what I mean? It's like, some things can feel repetitive after a while. So it's given me an appreciation for where I come from in Alaska, and community where you come from, but also like an appreciation for characters. The things that I like stand out in certain places are the characters that you meet in those places. So that like brings it all back home to, like, that's the part that I appreciate the most about traveling, is it's just more reasons to connect with people and expand.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And so like we've taken up a lot of your time.
Sure.
But I do kind of want to touch on, like, what's next.
Oh,
sure. What's coming down the pipe that you're excited about? And, like, what are you thinking? You want to get back into, maybe get that clothing line back up?
I don't know. I've never really planned a year in advance, other than I want to do.
You're not a planner.
I'm not a planner. I just like to do cool things. And when I set my mind to something, I plan everything that makes it work, but I don't plan a year
one of
in
the
advance.
things that you said like before, you were like, I manifested that.
Sure.
So you have ideas, you have goals, you have dreams. Like, is there anything else coming up, or have you accomplished it all?
No,
You're like, I did it all,
I have
baby.
not
I'm
accomplished
done.
it all.
Check.
I always wanted to tour and tour manage and be a part of the music world, and I've done that to a degree. I haven't done international touring. I haven't done arena tours. I've pretty much just done club level.
Put it out into the universe, baby.
Yeah, putting it out there. I honestly, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, just because I'm coming off of 3 back-to-back tours that were very difficult and time-consuming, and you name it, and had to deal with like some depressive episodes in the middle, and these different things that are just total mental and different things like that. And I don't know. My mind is in both. I want to see more of the world and not so much the U.S. I don't know if that means touring or just traveling independently. Honestly, man, like, maybe it's turning 30, but my thoughts are getting domestic real quickly. I'm ready to, like, maybe a family, like maybe a home. Like, it's already happening. But
it is when you hit 30.
Yeah.
I swear.
And I think
as soon as you hit the 30,
and it could be accelerated because I've gotten to, like, at least put my foot in this world that I had kind of put on a pedestal for a long time, and being able to, like, tour and make an income adjacent to music by, like, helping all these shows happen, and trying not to be jaded the whole time, because sometimes you can get burnt out dealing with kids on a Tuesday, or no, I shouldn't say kids, people on a Tuesday. Average demographic of Touche is like 30, but but like,
damn kids.
You always have to remind yourself that what made you love it in the begin with. So like I always have to humble myself to not be like overly jaded or like too much of a pro, to like know that the live music is a thing and it's an experience for everybody. So like sometimes I have to catch myself and be like, no, actually that was so special for that person. I shouldn't call them a punisher, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Something like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. And I love you. And thank you for coming on the podcast and
Absolutely,
talking to
man.
us.
Love you guys. It's wonderful to catch up. I know I ranted a lot.
That's okay. No, I learned a lot, and I mean, like, I was like usually I can like take mental notes of like, oh, okay, this is a good clip that we'll pull for social media. So you had so many golden nuggets, man. You got so much wisdom to share, and so thank you for being open.
Yeah.
Talking about mental health and
Sure.
talking about what you're doing and how you got there.
I'm not a public facing person, so I wanted to be able to speak on stuff that people might enjoy hearing, because I'm not a Nick Carpenter. I'm not the front stage. I'm like running around the back usually, doing stuff like that. So thanks for giving me a platform to share on those things. I always want to zero in how important community is and Alaska is and the arts are. And like you told me to take an econ class, and it kind of helped develop my career. And I set you up when I was working at an agency, and it's kind of it's so important, all these little connections, and being from Alaska, even if we're isolated, it's so special, those things. I have a super quick story. I don't know if there's a hard time, very quick story about the importance. And it's only slightly name droppy, but I'll be like very humble, or I'll be like very honest about how it went. This first tour, it was like my first the band was like, hey, what are some unlocks, quote unquote, like places you haven't been that you're excited to be to?
That's cool. I like
they
that.
Were
What
living
are some unlocks?
They were living vicariously through me because they've been a band for now 15 years. At the time, it was 14 years. So they're like, oh yeah, Mac hasn't seen New York City before. And I was like, that was one of them. I was like, well, I've never been in New York City. And they're like, okay, we're going to be playing Terminal 5 with Thrice, which is a wonderful, crazy, cool venue. I've seen so many videos of people that have played there. And we go there, and I'm bringing this back to the importance of community and connections. And they're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to go to a bodega, and I want to meet an authentic New Yorker. Authentic New Yorker. I know you're gonna like this, Steven, because I know you're from. You got time in that area.
Authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. Immediately it happens. We pull up to Terminal 5. It's like the crew lead, because on that tour we had 4 local hands who were carrying in gear with us and setting us up.
Excited right now.
Okay. I promise I won't go too long on this.
That's okay.
So we pull up, we get out of the van, and it's an older mustachioed, gruff piece of beef jerky by the name of Big Earl was his name.
Oh, man.
He sees the TA, Touche Amore, and all the gear case, goes, TNA, you know what other people would say that stands for. Can't talk about that anymore. You know, and this is how he introduces. And I'm just like,
baby,
I'm like,
Big Earl.
I'm already like, I've already said I love characters, and that's the things I love about anybody, anywhere. And I'm like, oh God, this guy's great. And he goes, hey, nervous fella, what's up with you? Where are you from? And I'm like, Alaska. And he's like, oh yeah, Alaska? What do you want to do while you're here? He's like, I want to go to bodega. He's like, yeah, bodega around the corner. You'll find it. And I was like, all right. And he's like, Alaska, huh? He's like, you know the guys in Portugal, the men? And I'm like, so at this time, physically, no. Obviously they grew up in the Northern Valley like me, but they were older than me, so I never really, really got close to them. Like I saw Anatomy of a Ghost at the State Fair when I was a kid, like old, Gorley and Carruthers. Real old school.
Yeah.
Obviously I followed them. I admire them, what they do, everything they do, the way they represent community in Alaska. At this point, we've interacted on social media a number of times. Like they follow me from personal accounts. We follow each other. Never physically met. It just always managed to not happen. There's been times where they're, do you want to meet? And I was like, no, it's not the right time. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm putting him on a pedestal, but I relate to him. I look up to him, whatever. Yeah. So Instagram mutual follow, not physical, right? You know Portugal the man? I'm like, I'm in New York. I can bullshit a little bit. I was like, yeah, I know him. And he goes, all right. And he pulls up his phone and he takes a selfie video with me in the back. He goes, hey guys, I got a nervous fella says he knows you. And he just sends it to him. And I'm like,
oh, so good.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I love
oh my
that.
God. I'm like panicking because I half bullshitted, right? Like I haven't, at this point in time, as of this podcast, I have met a few of them, found out that like Gorley's mom and my mom worked together for a long time.
Wow.
Many small Alaska connections. Wonderful guys. But at this time I hadn't met him personally. So I was like, oh my God. And I get on Instagram and I'm like messaging Eric, I'm messaging the band account. And I'm just like, hey guys, Big Earl is probably sending you a message. And he just, please, I got to work all day with him at this venue. Just tell him you know me. I know that we've only interacted online. Please tell him you know me. I don't want to get heckled by this old New Yorker man. And it started with like this long, like all caps, like ha ha ha. Like they're like, we love Earl. Don't worry, we'll vouch for Alaskans. We'll tell him that you're our boy. And I was like, thank you. And they were, and like,
what a good story.
Ethan Hoke was like, you just got to be salty right back at him. You got to give him that Alaska spirit. And that's what happened is he tried to talk shit to us and we talk shit back. And now we love each other. And like, Big Earl tags me on his Instagram account later, and half of his timeline is either feeding baby deer in his backyard or hanging out with Portugal the man and talking about how they're like his best friends. Like every time we're in New York, we hang out with Big Earl. We love this guy, and I do too. I love Big Earl. But yeah, so like this is the crescendo. Is like Portugal guys, important as a community. They vouch for me. They're like, we'll vouch for an Alaska, no problem. And like I go in the green room and I'm like telling the band about it, and then Big Earl comes in our green room and he goes, "Yeah, Portugal guys say they know you." And I was like, oh, good, Earl. I didn't want you to think I was a poser. He's like, nah, you're still a friggin' poser. And he like walked out.
Yeah, Earl. Fuck yeah, dude.
At the Peltola rally, I finally got to meet Gorley in real life, and we talked all about how much we love Big Earl. And that's the importance of the music community of Alaska and supporting one another and how small the world it is and how fun it is when you open yourself to personalities.
Dude, well, that's the best way to end this podcast.
That's how I wanted to end it. I wasn't
story.
Scripted, but I wanted to work that into this theme.
Yeah, I love that. Well, hey, man, thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank you again.
Yeah, it was
Thank you.
Thanks to anyone who listened to it.
Yeah, seriously.
Missy.
Thanks for tuning in. Kyle and Steven will be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, check out gofixyourselfpodcast.com. And remember to always go fix yourself.